Good morning, coaches. Thanks for coming to today's e-workshop. We have today Motivational Monday with Hansen Bay, winning through process-focused coaching. Okay, a bit of housekeeping matters before we start the workshop. Okay, we have muted all of your mic. However, we strongly encourage you to provide your comments and questions through your Zoom chat box. Yep. So questions, we will raise them to the presenter at the end of the workshop for him to answer. Okay, a bit of more information about today's workshop. So today is all about sport psychology, process-focused coaching, delivered by Mr. Hansen Bay, who is currently the national goalball coach and also an experienced psychology coach. So basically, today's workshop is about what coaches can do to help their athletes focus on the process in order to achieve the desired outcomes. Yeah. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Hansen to begin the workshop. Hansen, please. Hansen, your turn to present. Hold on.
Okay. Thanks, Chuan Leong. I can't seem to unmute myself earlier. Good morning, coaches. Thanks for being here this morning. Okay, I see some familiar faces. Let me share my screen and we can get going. Okay, I may not know everybody here in the Zoom chat this morning, so it's only polite that I start off with a quick introduction. So I'm a coach developer for both the IPC as well as CoachSG. I am also the national coach for goalball. Goalball is a game for the visually impaired, but it's played by everyone. Whether you're sighted, you're low vision, or you're totally blind, it's a game for everybody. And I also serve as a sport and psychology coach. I have my own consultancy business. My academic background is in physical education and psychology. Okay, some of you may be familiar with this picture. This was the final penalty taker in the World Cup where England played against Colombia. Okay, he scored a goal and he sent England to the quarterfinals to play against Sweden. Now, this is a question that a lot of us coaches would have pondered about from time to time. Why do some players cope better under pressure? And why do some of them crumble? So a lot of times they will tell you that it's due to stress. Now, they are not wrong, but they are not completely correct at the same time. So stress is not always a bad thing. In fact, stress drives success. And the reason why you guys, and myself included, are so attracted to competitive sport is because of stress. Okay? Specifically, a positive kind of stress known as eustress. Now, just take some time to observe this slide here and observe the difference between eustress and distress. Now, the main difference between eustress and distress is that for eustress, although you are out of your comfort zone, you still feel that you can manage and control your challenges. However, when you are in distress, you perceive your challenges as being too great and you feel helpless. Now, coaches, notice I use perceive because stress is really perceived and subjective. Now, what could be stressful for me may not necessarily be stressful for maybe Chuan Leong. So it's really subjective. These are typical statements of an athlete experiencing distress. We call this the automatic negative thoughts, or ANTs for short. So as a coach, should be already thinking, how can I help my athletes cope with these ANTs, and so that they can cope better under pressure and to focus on what they can control. So what you can control basically refers to what's important now. And we'll find out how we can help athletes cope better with pressure by answering this question, what's important now? This is the same skill that I have taught able-bodied athletes as well as para-athletes to help them to perform at their best. It is not as simple as following these 3 steps, but it gives you an idea on how you can help the athletes to focus better on what they can control by following the first step, which is to first help them understand the difference between expectations and process goals. For psychology skills to work, okay, you can't just ask them to follow what you tell them to do. They need to understand so that they will be able to apply it more effectively. So step 2 is where you identify, or rather you rephrase these expectations into process goals. And you may know what to do. You also want to do what you know. That is where you integrate what you have done in the first 2 steps into your coaching practices. Now I realize that at this point in time, these 3 steps may seem a little bit unclear, vague to everybody, but be patient, follow me along and you have a better idea. Okay, now coaches, here's a quick game to get you guys, to prime you guys to think about expectations and process goals. Categorize these 3, thoughts, okay, into 2 different groups. You can write it down on your paper, or even better, you can type it into the chat group. So if there's any, if coaches type in their thoughts in the chat group, do let me know.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So coaches, we will give you a couple of minutes to think through and then type your answers into the Zoom chat box.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good. So are you guys ready for the answer? I think most of you would have intuitively categorized the thoughts into these 2 different groups. Now, this will be a good time for us to start thinking about what's the difference between expectations and process goals. The first column are what we refer to as expectations, and the second column will be what we consider to be process goals. Now, this is what I've, allow me to give you some context behind this picture. This was in 2018, and this was the final of the Malaysian Open for goalball. So this was right before our game against Indonesia, where we managed to beat them by just 1 goal to win the Malaysian Open. So what I told the team was to emphasize that we are here to win, but we can only win if we let go of the need to win. Now it sounds a little bit of a catch-22. Okay, we are here to win, yet I'm asking you to not think about winning. Now, I'm not sure what you think about this statement, and some coaches and even athletes have questioned me and say that, hey, is it true that you don't want to win? Now, I get a little bit offended when I get such questions because that's not true at all. I want to win. But the reason why I tell my team something like this, or rather the reason will become more apparent as we go along. Okay, question. Now, Chuanla, I'm going to need your help here because I won't be able to see the chat group since I'm sharing my slide.
Yep.
Okay, can I just hear from the coaches? You can type it into the chat group. What is the difference between expectations and process goals? Just based on what you have seen so far, experienced so far, and based on your own personal experience.
All right, coaches, please take a minute or two to think about what you have seen just now from Hansen's slides on expectations and process goals. And then type in your answer into this Zoom chat box. Just short answers will do. Thank you. Okay, we have one response so far. Keep the comments coming.
You want to share with me what the response is, Chuan Liao?
Okay, first answer I've seen is expectations is like the end outcome.
Absolutely right. Okay, expectations are based on the outcome. What about process goals? How do they differ from process goals?
Okay, so just Hansen has already shared that yes, expectations is very similar, or should we say the same as the end outcome. So what are the differences actually between these two? What do you think?
There are right and wrong answers, but I prefer wrong answers because wrong answers allow us to discuss and learn better. So I will prefer wrong answers if there are any.
Okay, we have a few more answers here. Okay, process goals, doing things step by step. Okay, and another answer is process goals are like slow working goals and focus on tasks. Okay, it focuses on how we go about doing something, whereas expectations are uncontrollables. Yeah, process goals are within the athlete's control. Yep, any
Very good.
thoughts?
Yep. Very good, coaches. What I hear based on your response is that most of you are really experienced and you have the experience, perhaps even as a competitive athlete yourself, and you have the experience of leading a team. And you realize that in order to be successful, to reach your goals, you need to focus on the step by steps. You need to focus on what's within your control instead of focusing on the outcome, which you may not have direct control. So you are right, absolutely right. Expectations are the demands that you place on yourself. They are the must and the shoulds. They are running between our ears, whenever we want to work towards a certain goal. They are inevitable, but what we can do is to learn how to rephrase expectations to process goals. Now, here are the difference between expectations and process goals. Have a quick look at this slide. Okay, I'm not going to just read off the slide, so it's more for you to read and have a quick understanding. So in 1 minute or so, I'm going to move on to the next slide. And we have a new question as well for discussion. Okay, next question. Now, how does a focus on winning set you up to fail? I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. But why is it that when I keep thinking about I want to win, I want to win, I want to win, okay, I'm setting up myself for failure. This is again sounds counterintuitive.
All right, coaches. Now let's take another minute or two to think about this question, and then type out a response in your Zoom chat box. Okay, we have a first response right now. Going all out to win distracts you from the game plan.
Very good. So If you are competing, instead of focusing on man on, box out, running into passing lanes, okay, if you are constantly distracted about the need to win, it's very hard for you to focus on what's important now. Excellent answer. Okay, that tells me that you have great experience in coaching. Any other answers?
Okay, a couple more answers right now. Okay, first one is the overthinking on winning causes you not to perform on the task, as in not being focused on the task. The other one is it results in overconfidence.
Good. So yes, when we want to perform well, we want to be assertive. Being assertive means we don't want to overthink. And what happens when we overthink? I think the coach who gave us the answer would have had the same experience himself. The players would have probably over mastered certain moves, or freeze when there's a chance to take a shot. So these are the consequences of overthinking, and a focus on winning does result in overthinking. Very good, coaches. I'll show you your answers that you came up with, and focus on winning also causes you to focus on what you do not have direct control over. And before we eventually win or succeed, along the way we are bound to make mistakes. We are bound to experience failure. If we are only focused on winning rather than learning from our mistakes, okay, it's hard for us to get better and to reach our goals. So these are the two other reasons besides the ones given by the coach earlier why the focus on winning actually sets us up for failure. Another question. This is the last question for now. Does that mean you should not have goals? Okay, besides giving me the a yes or no answer, maybe you want to expand on it as well. So type your answers, your thoughts into the chat group, please.
Okay, coaches. Okay, other than indicating yes or no, please also elaborate briefly on why yes or why no.
Yep. Oh, I accidentally clicked the slide earlier. So I've given the answer.
Already? Okay, one answer right now. Okay, no. We must have simple goals to improve ourselves.
Great answer. Yep. Goals are they provide us with direction. They direct our motivation. They give us benchmarks to find out whether we have progressed, whether we have made improvements. We must have goals. The problem is, okay, we tend to bring our goals into the competition with us. It's okay to have goals, but let's not bring our goals into competition or even practice with us. Okay, if we do that, okay, we are focusing on the outcome and we are not focusing on the process and we're not focusing on what's important now. Okay, we are done with the first step. That was quick, wasn't it? So this is a process that you want to bring your athletes through for your athletes to begin to understand why it's important to focus on what they can control rather than on winning or the outcome. It's important for them to understand because it's not intuitive. It's a catch-22. You want me to win, yet you want me to not focus on winning. So you need to get them to comprehend and understand first, so that by the time we move on to the second step, okay, the acceptance level is higher and they are more likely to apply. Now let's start off with expectations. Expectations, as shared with you guys earlier, okay, is related to the outcome, winning or losing the results, and it's also related to social approval. There are two related types of expectations: social approval and outcome. I refer the expectations related to the outcome as time traveling. Okay, you want to win, but has it happened yet? It has not happened yet. So you are time traveling to the future. Can we time travel backwards? It happens as well, because you could be thinking about a past experience where you lost to a particular team or an opponent, and you're constantly worried about a previous loss or a mistake you made earlier. If you're constantly distracted by that, it's hard for you to focus on right now. What's important now? My reading refers to what you think others are thinking about you, how they are going to be judging you. Now, this may or may not be true. Most of the time, okay, it's actually not true. People don't really care how well or how badly you perform, but we perceive them to be judging us all the time. So these are some examples of time traveling and mind reading. So coaches, just spend some time observing these statements, and you realize that for expectations, they often come with a must and a should. These are all demands that we place on ourselves. Now, I'll share a funny story of an athlete that I worked with. This was probably, yes, it was in 2015, as we were working towards the Rio Olympics. One of the athletes, when I tried to guide her to list down her expectations, okay, one of the things she wrote down was, I must not disappoint my followers. So I was thinking, what does she mean by followers? Back then I didn't know what was Instagram. Okay, today, right, I check my Instagram several times a day. So a lot of times, right, your followers don't really bother. They follow you for the sake of following you, but they may not necessarily be too affected by whether you win or you lose. But okay, between your ears, you are so bothered about how they're going to judge you if you do not perform well. And if you're thinking that way, you are thinking, or rather, if you are deliberating on your expectations day in, day out, it's going to compound, it's going to snowball. And by the time competition comes, chances of you breaking down is so much higher. So, what I've just alluded towards is that, okay, rephrasing your expectations is not something that you do on competition day. It's something that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. Now, these are some questions that you can make use of. I think after this session, everybody will have access to the slides. Make use of these questions to get your athlete to think about their expectations and get them to write it down on a piece of paper. It's a reflective practice that will help them to develop their thought awareness also. With better awareness of your thoughts, it gives you a gap and an opportunity to behave differently and to choose a more generative and a better option. Okay, so let's move on to process goals. Okay, here are some examples of process goals. I'm just going to spend a few seconds on each slide, okay, so that you guys have a better idea on what constitutes a process goal. It usually consists of something that matters and something that's within your control. So I've just shared something to do, process goals related to individual sport, related to a net barrier game, and last but not least, a territorial sport. Now, why process goals? Why is it important to identify process goals? Once again, coaches, I'll need your help, I'll need your contribution to share with everybody through the chat group why is it important to identify process goals and you focus on process goals. We'll spend a couple of minutes to do so. Chuan Leong, do let me know if you receive any answers.
Yeah, okay, sure. All right, coaches. Just now we talked about expectations versus process goals. So now the focus is on process goals. So think about what are process goals, what do process goals mean to you, and why we should focus on process goals.
Yeah, sometimes I may ask the same question in a different way. I do that very often with athletes as well. This is to help them to connect the dots, especially with ideas or beliefs that are not so intuitive. Yeah, so I am actually asking you a similar question as to what I've asked you earlier, but perhaps in a different way. So, why is it important to think about process goals and to focus on process goals? Have a go, coaches.
Okay, we have a first response here. Process goals are
Excellent.
things
Mm,
that athletes can do or slightly higher than their abilities and can be used to improve their performance.
very good. So you want them to focus on things that are within their control. It could be a little bit outside of the comfort zone. You know your athletes best. So when you focus on process goals, chances of you feeling anxious is lower because it is when you focus on things that are not within your control that you begin to feel helpless. And when this sense of helplessness spirals, that's where anxiety kicks in. And that's where you lose confidence and you can't focus on your performance. Very good.
Okay, we have a few more responses here. Okay, for team sport, process goals is important for individuals to get better in their personal playing position, and this personal process goal will lead to team goals.
Absolutely. So I work with several teams as well. And after a while, once we keep reinforcing process goals, you will observe the talk language of the players. Okay, they will be making use of process goals also when they're talking to their teammates. And as described by the coach earlier, these process goals become the team goals as well. Okay, excellent, well done. Chuan Leong, who was the coach earlier that talked about process goals, or rather building up to
It's Candy actually, Candy Lee.
Candy, my good friend. He
Yeah,
coaches basketball. Excellent coach. Yeah,
yeah.
I think he.
Another couple of comments is no need to get kanchong, and then step-by-step guiding lights that are achievable and within our control.
Good. Okay, so I've just shared with you the reasons for process goals, and I like the previous answer from the coach also to focus on the step by step. We may not necessarily want to use statements like "don't need to be kanchong" because when we say "don't panic," what the athlete is focusing on is actually panic. So you want to say breathe, stay calm. So that will be aligned with getting them to focus on process goals. Yeah. Okay. I hope I've convinced you enough why it's important for us to focus on our process goals and to get the athlete to develop their thought awareness by reviewing, what are the expectations that are often clouding their ability to focus during competition and practice. Okay. So when I say focus on what's important now, I am inevitably saying focus on process goals. So these both are one and the same. Okay, so you want to guide your athlete, okay, in the process, through the process of identifying their expectations and to replace them with process goals, as you can see on the right side here. Now, my question next is, what happens after this? So what if I have helped them to develop their awareness about their expectations? So what if I have replaced them with process goals? Okay, we need to make use of these process goals. And how do we make use of these process goals? Okay, that brings us to the next step, step two, where we will find out more. Now, Second step is to, or rather do the third step. We have finished the second step already, where we integrate what we have done so far into our coaching practices. This is perhaps the most important step. Okay, because we have done the first two steps. If we don't apply, we are not necessarily going to get the results that we are after. So, just to have a general sense of the coach's understandings at this point, I would like coaches once again to keen your thoughts. How would you integrate win into your coaching practice based on what you have learned and experienced and heard so far?
Okay, coaches, basically WIN is the acronym for what's important now, referring to process goals. So how would you integrate process goals into your coaching practice? That's the question. Okay, we have one response so far. Okay, to foster a growth mindset with goals that are achievable and within their control.
Okay, good. I like the answer, and you are right. It's absolutely related to the growth mindset. The growth mindset focuses on effort and learning, and how much effort and time you invest into learning something is within your control. How coachable you are is within your control. So I like the answer. Give me more specifics. So how would you, you know, shape the way you coach in order to get your athletes to focus on the process, and in the process, okay, it rhymes, doesn't it? Okay, think more in a growth mindset. How would you do it? Let's have some specifics.
Okay, quite an interesting response, this one. Okay, winning is like a dream and vision. Working on the process goal to work towards the goal and the dream.
Okay, good. So it sounds like focusing on the process is pretty much, very much, I would say, part of this coach's personal philosophy. And can this coach, may I know the name of the coach?
It's Candy again.
Candy, specifically, how would you, get your athletes to focus on the process in your day-to-day coaching? How will it influence the way you speak to them? How will it influence the way you behave?
Okay, a response by Linus. Okay, setting session goals and get athletes to work on achieving it.
Very good. So you want to have specific process goals, and I'm sure Linus will consider, whether these goals are achievable. So these goals will be something that helps them to cycle between comfort and discomfort, not too easy and not too hard, and something that is more or less within their control. Very good. So you want to set goals that are achievable rather than you need to be able to complete, 5 sets of 400 meters in 45 seconds. Okay. I want to set more achievable goals, or I want to focus on, as you are doing your drills, okay, focus on your cadence, breathe, and relax your shoulders. So these are also process goals that can help them to achieve the outcome goals. Very good. Any other answers, Chuan Liang, before I
Yeah,
move on?
coaches to use words relating to process goals during training rather than results or goals that are uncontrollable.
Very good. So what this tells me is this particular coach, what's his name or her name?
Kalin Lee.
Yeah. Yep. Colin will have a great understanding about this. Is that we how we give feedback really matters, and we have identified the process goals based on from step 2, where we got the athletes to rephrase their expectations into process goals. So make use of these process goals when you're communicating with the athlete, when you're giving them feedback. And we call this process-based feedback. Thank you very much, Kalin. Kalin is an excellent sports psychologist, by the way. Okay, so as you can see here, something that you guys have alluded to, somebody spoke about a growth mindset, excellent, and some of you also spoke about giving process-based feedback. In fact, the research has shown that besides role modeling, one of the most impactful way to get your athlete to think in a growth mindset is by giving them process-based feedback. So, what are examples of process-based feedback? Now, observe this slide. Now, same scenario. This particular athlete obviously didn't do a good job with his communication skills on the field. The first example, you are simply telling him, hey, you are a poor communicator. It's based on an outcome. Okay, and how does that impact on the learner? The second example, the coach, instead of simply telling him that you are a poor communicator, okay, he goes on, or rather he asks him or her, you did well by asking for the ball. What else could you have done to improve communication? So he makes use of coaching and asking. And in the process, he's getting the athlete to think about what's within his or her control to get better at communicating with his or her team. So making use of questions does help the athlete to focus on the process. Now, here are more examples. Now, obviously, right, you miss the target again. So instead of parroting what the athlete can really see, unless of course the athlete is visually impaired, okay, you want to be specific and tell them what is within their control. Keep your body low and use your instep. So both are things that are within their control. Okay, so I've got 3 more examples, and here's where I need your contribution again. Instead of saying defend properly, what could be a better feedback based on the process that you can make use of? Coaches, let's hear from you via the chat group again.
All right, coaches, take some time to rephrase these 3 questions, these 3 remarks into something different that reflects on process-based feedback. Thank you.
I'm excited to hear your answers.
Okay, so far we have a first response for defend properly, which is
Okay,
keep your body low, focus on the task.
very good. So keep your body low. Is this something that's within his control? Yes, it is. Focus on the task. Is it something that he can control? And can we be more specific? So these are questions that we want to think about. And coaches, we want to plan also beforehand what kind of feedback we want to give, so that during the heat of competition or even training, okay, we will be more deliberate in giving feedback that's aligned with the process. Any more examples, Chuan Leong?
Yes, we have a few more examples on Facebook. Okay, for defend properly, okay, rephrase as try to be aware of the attacker.
Okay, so try to be more aware of the attacker. How can we rephrase this such that it's more specific? because be aware is very vague. So when you have something too general, okay, I may not be able to focus on that. And how does that make me feel? I may begin to feel a little bit more helpless. So, but if I can narrow down to something more specific, okay, that
I
will
would think
help me
that
to feel more in control.
he's probably referring to keep your eyes focused on the attacker.
Ah, good. So these are things that we hear coaches say very often. Man on, box out. So I'm using examples from basketball and soccer instead of defend properly, which is very general and may not help them to focus on what they can control. Very good. So what about why do you keep making the same mistakes?
Okay,
Again, this is based on the outcome. How
yes,
can
we
we
have
face this
one
differently?
response here. It is good to learn from your mistakes. What do you think?
Good one. So you're encouraging the athlete to learn from the mistakes. And when I begin to get a coach like this and tell me, okay, it's good to learn from mistakes. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about the solution. So to help me further, as a coach, I can even go on to say that, okay, it's always good to learn from your mistakes. And I understand that this may seem overwhelming. Let's try to break this down into smaller steps. So what's happening here? Okay, what's happening when I begin to see a complex problem in its smaller steps? Are these smaller steps things that are within my control? Chances are they are. And when these smaller steps are within my control, how do I feel? I feel more confident and I'm more ready to learn from my mistakes and to get better and better. And what I've just described is the growth mindset. So the growth mindset is pretty much aligned with being process focused.
Okay, Hansen, we have another couple of input for why do you keep making the same mistakes? Okay, first one is calm yourself down and do it again. Another one
Mm,
is, can you analyze where you went wrong?
good. So do remember that this is something that we want to talk about only after the competition, or you want to pull the athlete out during practice and let's analyze this. We don't want them to do it during competition. Otherwise, we're getting them to do what? We're getting them to overthink. So I like those answers, those replies, but just take note of the fact that you want to do it, okay, as a form of review instead. Yeah, which I will be talking about later. And here's a suggestion to calm yourself down. Okay, a better process go will be breathe, smile. So when you breathe, you smile, it's within your control. And how do you feel after you take a breath? You feel more composed and calm. All right. Thank you very much for your responses, coaches. What
Yeah,
about the last one? Good job and
yeah,
well
for
done.
the last one, okay, good job, well done. Okay, good effort, you can do it better. That's one of them.
Mhm.
Target, goal achieved. That's another one.
Nice. So, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that you do not want to praise your athletes. On the same note, when you are very specific about how you praise, okay, that improves their ability to focus on the process. Okay, instead of saying target achieved or good job, well done. Okay, think about this. Okay, hear me out. Okay, I have an athlete who has finally managed to score goals, okay, consistently. It could be in floorball, football, or even basketball. So I will say something like, you did really well today. Remember when you first started, your first 5 games, you didn't even manage to score a goal. Okay. But now look at how much you have improved. You are scoring in almost every game. What do you do differently? Do you begin to see how by making use of good questions, I get them to think about what is within their control and what they have done well so they can do more of it. And I'm getting them to develop the habit of focusing on effort, learning, and the process. Okay, I will be moving on to the next slide. And here's another strategy to help you to get your athletes to focus more on the process. You know, before we go for training, before we go for competition, we do a warm up physically. You can consider this as a warm up for the athletes' minds. Say, for example, I have a session goal of this for rowing, 3 sets of 5,000 meters in 20 minutes. So before the athlete starts going on to the boat or I can't remember, the simulator. Okay, I may want to ask him or her the question, what are the expectations that you are bringing into this practice? So typically he or she will say, I must be able to complete 3 sets in 20 minutes. Then the next question I will ask him or her is, now, when are you most likely to be distracted by these expectations? Now, most of you will know that the athlete will most likely be distracted when he or she is fatigued, when he's tired. Okay, we always have this saying, Shaq cannot think. So he or she will probably reply, during the last set, towards the last 1,000 meters, that's where I'm going to be the most distracted by, am I able to achieve this? If I don't achieve this, what would my coach say? How will he judge me? Okay. And my next question will be, what can you refocus on when you are distracted by these expectations? Now, this is where we begin to bring in the process goals that we have helped the athlete to identify. So simple process goals in relation to this particular practice could be, okay, breathe, chest up, okay, legs. So these are things that I want to focus on that will get me through the last 2,000 meters. So when we warm up their minds, the chance of them being able to focus on the process is higher. And now, it's not possible to not think about expectations. It's just not how our mind works, but it is possible to increase the probability of the athlete focusing on the process rather than expectations. So what happens after the session? Again, we want to help them to do a quick review so that they begin to join the dots about what they have done well and what they can do differently. So as we begin to help them join the dots and we begin to do this every training sessions, okay, the brain that does the thinking does the learning. Okay, they begin to make focusing on a process more of a habit. As you can see, okay, these are the questions that you can make use of for your review. Spend some time uh, looking at these questions before I interrupt you shortly. Okay, now coaches, the thing I would like to impress on all of us, I'm a coach myself, is that our day-to-day interaction with the athlete plays such an important role. Okay, I will argue that it's perhaps the most important factor that determines the athlete's mental game during competition. How we provide feedback, how we facilitate, okay, their thinking, how we integrate this with the physical training and technical training, okay, really matters. Okay, it is not about getting them to work with a sports psychologist, a month before competition or a day before competition. It is in your day-to-day coaching practices, and you want them to, or you will want to integrate what you have learned today into your coaching practice. This is something that you need to think about after this session. All right. So we've come to the end of the 3 steps to what's important now. I'll just do a really quick recap. So you don't want them to just follow your instructions to focus on the process. The first step is to get them to understand the relationship between expectations and process goals. And why is it that overemphasis on winning, overthinking on winning will actually lead them to commit more mistakes and to lose confidence? Okay, that's step one. Step two is to get them to deliberate and to reflect on what are the expectations that are limiting their confidence, and also to help the athletes identify their process goals. I've shared some questions with you in the slides earlier that will guide you to do this review with your athletes, and I hope you will make use of it. And finally, and perhaps the most important step would be to integrate and apply this into your coaching practices, your day to day. Now, a very important or powerful thing that happens as we begin to do this with athletes is that our own thinking starts to change also. We start to be more aware about our own demands, our fear of judgments, our fear of losing, and we also begin to identify our own process goals. That helps us to enjoy coaching better. That helps us to be more composed, and in the process, that improves our chances of experiencing success as a coach. So these are the three steps to what's important now. And before I hand the session back to Chuan Leong, okay, I would like to impress on everybody that this is not something that applies only to sport. In fact, this is so important to life. Okay, it has a big impact on our daily lives. It can help us to improve on any achievement and even our relationships. So this is Joan. She's one of my global player, and she has a degenerative eye condition, meaning that she's going to go blind gradually, or rather, she's going to experience total blackness someday. When this is going to happen, how it's going to happen, she does not have the answer, or rather, she does not have total control. So this really affects her ability to focus on her day-to-day tasks. And what she shared with the teammates and the coaches is that what she has learned about focusing on what's within her control and what's important now has also helped her to cope with the anxiety and the uncertainty about her own deteriorating eyesight and condition. So she's actually teaching this to students and executives in schools and in corporate companies as well. The skill of learning how to focus on what's important now. Now, with that, I've come to the end of the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to share your questions and thoughts in the chat group. And I'm going to, you can also get in touch with me via my email. This is my Instagram, and I also have a blog, coachhansen.com.sg.